Washington, D.C., of course, we'll have a parade here in Pittsburgh, as we always do. But, you know, I suppose for memorials, Washington is really the center of what happens in our nation. It's our capital. And so there are lots of memorials there. If you've never been there, it's an impressive place to go. It really is a place I think everybody should go to understand how much it's taken to bring our nation to where we are at today. And it reminds us that though we live in a country that's filled with freedom, nothing is free that brought us this far. It was exacted at an awful price. And if you've never visited, say, Arlington National Cemetery, which is one of the national memorials, and looked at those endless fields of white crosses and graves there, you don't really appreciate the sacrifice that has gone in to bringing us the opportunity to meet freely and to talk about what we believe and to serve the Lord Jesus Christ. If you went to Washington, you would see lots of memorials. You'd see the Washington Memorial, of course, the big pinnacle there, the Lincoln Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial, the Tomb to the Unknown Soldier Memorial, and all these unique pieces of American culture, and none of them really the same. Each memorial quite different from the other memorials in the way that it's constructed, and for the United States anyway, our memorials are all built in a certain manner so that the memorial itself is reflective of what it means. And that I don't know all of what those things are today and don't have time to share those with you, but if you want the memorials based on their domes and their columns and their pinnacles, all would tell you something. They are designed by design to tell a story. The Washington Monument, of course, reminds us of George Washington, the first president of the nation. The Jefferson Memorial reminds us of the founder of the Declaration of Independence. The Lincoln Memorial about the emancipator of the slaves. The Vietnam Memorial about all of the men and women who gave their lives in that war. The Korean Memorial and the Tomb to the Unknown Soldier that reminds us of the cost of our freedom. If you drive around our community this week, though, you will also see memorials here. We have one where we live at, just in Laurel Gardens, right at the top of the hill there, a little community memorial, and it will be decorated with flowers and be all cleaned up. There's one down on the north side here, right off of Brighton Road. You'll see it. It's the memorial to the victor. If you've never seen that memorial, this week they'll have a ceremony there and it'll be decorated with flowers. Building memorials is really nothing new. People from ancient times have built memorials. Some of the best known ones would be the pyramids, right? These towering things that go up hundreds of feet, built with huge blocks, of course, built by the pharaohs to memorialize themselves. The Sphinx in ancient Egypt, built as a memorial. And of all of the ancient memorials, most people don't think of the one in Joshua chapter 4. And in fact, when you compare it to Egypt, or if you compare it to South America, or you compare it to Washington, D.C., Joshua's memorial isn't all that impressive. It's only 12 rocks. And when you think about those 12 rocks, it wasn't even a big pile of rocks. And when you think about the size of the rocks, they had to be small enough so that somebody could pick it out of the river and throw it on their shoulder and carry it across. So how big could the memorial be? Probably it would easily fit in just a small portion of this platform. And yet, it wasn't so much the size of the memorial, was it? It's not, the rocks were not all that impressive. I can't imagine that the Jordan River has anything precious as far as stones. I think they were just 12 rocks, but it was where the rocks had been. The rocks had been in there were this precious artifact, the Ark of the Covenant, which reminded Israel of God's presence traveling along with them. Every place they went, the Ark reminded them that God was with them. God was traveling with them. God was protecting them. God was supplying them. God had given His word to them. And it was to remind them of God's promises. And so they picked up one guy per rock, one rock, one man, and carried these 12 rocks out from where the Ark of the Covenant had been standing in the middle of the river with the priest holding it while the water backed up. Why did they do that? Well, it tells us in the passage that they did it so that when people saw the stones, and eventually they took them with them to the camp, and they set them up, apparently not in a pile. Now, we don't know what they looked like, but apparently it was not like, I would probably have made a nice little pile so that people could see them. But apparently it was not that way. How they were set up, we're not exactly sure. But we know that they were set up for a reason, and they were set up to raise a question. And the question is this: why the pile of rocks? That's all it was. Why are these stones here? Why did somebody take the time to pull 12 rocks out of the river and put them here in the middle, right outside of Gilgal? Every good memorial, if it's in your neighborhood, or it's in Washington, D.C., or it's in Egypt, ought to do two things. It ought to raise a question: why is it there? And ultimately, it should tell a story as to why it's there. And these 12 stones, these 12 rocks, did that. They told the story of God bringing Israel across the Jordan River on dry ground, just like He did with Moses and all the rest of them. Remember, Joshua was the new leader, and certainly it didn't hurt his leadership any when he walked across on dry ground. I think a lot of people probably would have compared him and said, I'm not sure this Joshua's up to this task like Moses was. And so people say maybe that's why God did it, was to help reinforce Joshua's leadership of the people. But we know that it tells us it was to be a memorial for all time. Look at verse 24, and it says this: He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. The rocks raise a question, and that question deserves an answer, and the answer is, why are these rocks here? It's so that everybody might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful. What? Powerful enough to stop the water of the Jordan, powerful enough to remind them He stopped the waters in the Red Sea, powerful enough that He brought them out of slavery, out of Egypt, powerful enough to remind them He delivered them with miracle after miracle after miracle to get them where they needed to be. You know, when a person goes to the, say, the Lincoln Memorial, and I remember being there as a child and being there as a young adult, and I remember as a child thinking how enormous Abraham Lincoln is in that memorial, and I thought when I went back as an adult, he would be smaller. You know, how everything is as a child, you know. But actually, to me, he seemed like he was bigger. And I don't really know why in my mind it sticks out that way. But as you go there and you look at that monument and you read the inscriptions that are there, and you're reminded of the struggle that was involved as a nation, and how God used a particular individual in that struggle to not only to save the Union, but also to change the entire culture. And had that not happened, it's hard to say where the United States would be at today. Not united, and probably not states, but there was this tremendous struggle. And so when if you've never seen the Lincoln Memorial and you walk up to it, the question is, why is it there? The question, why? And then it tells a story. It's a story about emancipation and freedom, and the preserving of a nation. When an Israelite would have looked at these arrangement of these 12 rocks, and however they were arranged, he saw that there was the hand of a powerful God involved with it. Now, I have to admit, you know, if you're just kind of, you know, driving down a road and you saw even a pile of rocks along the road, most of us would probably not take any account to it. We wouldn't even notice it. But I think somehow these 12 rocks were something over the years, and had to be over the years, that they were tended and visited, and people came by, and they reminded them, hey, you know where those rocks were? They used to be out in the middle of the Jordan River, but they're here because God brought us on dry land. God's worthy of reverence and respect. He's a God of hope and strength. He's a God who keeps His promises.